Hello, this is a video about market research for Unit 1 as part of the AQA GCSE Business Studies course. So these are the specification objectives for Unit 1 for market research, and it's, as you should be aware, Unit 1 is concerned with setting up a business or small businesses. So we're thinking about carrying out market research with a really limited budget. A really good way to think about this is to imagine that you're setting up a business and think about the resources that you have available to be able to research your potential customers or competitors. You're not going to have a huge budget to be able to carry out market research. You're not going to be able to employ a specialist organisation to carry out the market research for you. You're going to have to think about methods that you can do on your own. This is also a really important section of the course because it will link to your controlled assessment as well. So whatever year you take your controlled assessment in, there is always an element of understanding. Well, you have to go out and research primary and secondary sources, and you have to understand what the data shows you as well. So this should be useful as a recap for that section as well. So in this video we're going to be looking at understanding the purpose of market research, and we're going to be looking at the different methods of market research that are suitable for small businesses. We're also going to be considering the advantages and disadvantages of these methods of research. In the second video I'm going to look more closely at these types of methods that are listed at the beginning. Okay, so let's make a start. Market research then. Here is the definition. It's all about collecting information about customers, potential customers, and or competitors. So this could be information about a customer's opinion about a new product that you're planning on bringing out, or it could be information about what products your competitor already sells, the prices they're charging, how they're promoting their product. It could be anything that you're researching. It's really vast, a very vast area. So we like to split down the types of market research that we're doing into primary and secondary market research. Now the difference between primary and secondary market research is that primary is collecting information that does not already exist. It has been collected for a specific purpose. So the entrepreneur will think, what do I want to find out? This is their research objectives. They might want to find out someone's opinion about a new product that they're about to launch. They might want to find out how much potential customers are willing to pay. So they'll go out and ask whoever they can find who might be a potential customer, how much would you be willing to pay for this? And they might make a decision based on that. But before they went out to ask these customers, the information didn't exist. But it's also very, very specific. It's been collected for the purpose of that business by that entrepreneur. So they're saying, how much would you pay for this product? Whereas secondary market research is finding information that's already been collected for another purpose. So it might be data on how much consumers tend to be willing to pay for a cup of coffee. It might be very general in nature. It might be relevant to what you're doing, but it's not going to tell you how much a customer would be willing to pay for your cup of coffee that you're producing unless you go out and actually collect that research yourself. So here's a little quiz for you. Here are lots of different methods of market research that an entrepreneur could carry out if they're trying to find out information about customers or their competitors. So see if you can guess which of these methods are primary and which ones are secondary. It'd be good to pause at this point. Okay, here are the primary and the secondary methods. What's really interesting here is lots of students just naturally assume that an internet search has to be secondary market research, but that's not true, because that is an example of the entrepreneur going out, finding out information themselves about the competitors and what they're selling. So before they did their internet research, they didn't have that information, so they're going to find that information themselves. They're compiling a list themselves. Whereas here we can see an example of secondary market research, government information collected for a census. So that information has already been collected, it's already been presented, which makes it secondary market research. Okay. This section is very important. Why carry out market research? So I've got a bullet point here. Now, it is fine to just learn this for the exam. You will get an okay mark, but you won't get an excellent mark unless you can explain why that is beneficial to the business. So here is my explanation. So by understanding what a customer wants, the business can adapt their product, the price, the promotion. I could have gone on and on there, packaging, place, all of those types of things. And they can make the product more attractive to the customer. This might make it more likely that the customer is going to buy the product. This will increase revenue, and it may also reduce the chance that the business will promote a product that has little chance of selling, because the customer would never have bought a product that looks like that. Okay, so I've got some more bullet points here. Have a think now if you can do the analysis. So explain why this is beneficial for the business. So if you want to pause here. Okay, so here are my responses, and there's lots of different responses that you could have. If your answers are slightly different from mine, it doesn't mean that they're not correct, but the important thing is to make sure you always explain every point that you make. Okay, so here's a little recap quiz for you. If you're getting the answers to these questions, you're doing very, very well. If not, maybe rewind, go back to some of the earlier slides. So this is what I set for my class for homework. Benefits of primary market research, benefits of secondary market research, problems with primary, problems with secondary market research. So here are the benefits of both of them, apart from finding out, the general benefits, finding out about your customers and what they want. The benefits of primary market research as opposed to secondary are that it is very specific to the needs of the business. So you know that you're going to, the entrepreneur knows that they're going to find out the answers to the questions that they ask, whereas secondary market research might be relevant, but it doesn't answer completely the questions that the entrepreneur has. And the entrepreneur also knows how the data has been collected. So they will have an idea of the age of the data, because with secondary market research it might be quite out of date. They will also know the methods that we use to collect it. So one of the problems with secondary market research, and with primary market research as well, is that if you collect your data in a way that gives leading questions to customers, so that it leads them to answer in a certain way, either positively or negatively, the data becomes unreliable. So with primary market research, this might be a little less likely, it might still be likely, but you can trust the data a little bit more because you have knowledge of how it's been collected. With secondary market research, though, the data's already been collected, so it should take less time to gather, and you should be able to analyse the data more quickly than you would be able to with primary market research, because you've got to collect it all first. Because of this, it should be a cheaper process to carry out. Now remember, we're thinking about Unit 1 here, we're thinking about people that are setting up businesses. They've got a lot of things to do to be able to set up that business. So being able to spend a little bit less time on collecting market research, although it is very, very important to collect market research, being able to reduce the time it takes to collect that market research may be very valuable to that entrepreneur. Problems of market research. It can be time consuming to collect. So it's what we call an opportunity cost. You could have been doing something else with that time that you've taken collecting this primary market research. Now I say it can be time consuming to collect because actually questionnaires, which is a a very significant method of collecting primary market research. Questionnaires these days don't take very long at all because you can complete them online, you can complete them through SurveyMonkey, those types of websites, and they're quite straightforward. It's not about standing outside a shop and having to interview 500 people anymore, which is what they would have done maybe 10, 20 years ago. They might still do that to collect primary market research, but a lot of the questionnaire process takes place online, so it's a bit quicker to collect the data, a bit quicker to analyse the data. Problems with secondary market research, it may be irrelevant because it was collected for another purpose, so it's not specific to the data that you're trying to find out about. So going back to the example of the person setting up a shop and they're thinking, I want to find out how much people are willing to pay for a cup of coffee. With secondary market research, you might find out how much people are willing to pay for a cup of coffee on average in the whole of the UK, but it might not be specific to your local area where they might be willing to pay a little bit more or a little bit less. The second section looks at the reasons for research inaccuracy. So primary market research providing data that's not very reliable or it's quite inaccurate. So 3 points here. If you ask too few people, you won't get a typical opinion. You've got to make sure that your sample size just means the number of people that you're asking, is large enough to get a typical opinion. So that you can say with confidence, most people like this product, most people would be willing to pay this price for the product. If you ask people who are not similar to your target market, again, you're likely to get very unreliable data. So if you're aiming a product at a teenage market, you're going to want to ask teenagers what they think of the product rather than people, say, over 65, because they might not have similar attitudes towards those products as teenagers would. If your questions, and I spoke about this with the last slide, if the questions are leading, it may get your customers to answer in a certain way. So if it leads them or is biased and gets them to, it's phrased in an overly positive way, then you may find that people answer the question more positively than if it was phrased in a neutral manner. Problems for research inaccuracy with secondary market research: the information, as I said before, may be out of date and the information may not be reliable. If you're looking at company websites for data and it might be a report that they've published, sometimes on L'Oreal adverts they say 95% of customers agree that it makes the skin look more youthful. Well, that might be true, but what they might not be telling you is the 65% of the people interviewed would have preferred it if the price was a little bit cheaper, or if the fragrance in the cream was a little bit different. They're only ever going to promote the positive things about their own business. So again, the data with secondary market research may also be overly positive. Okay, here's this recap quiz again, same questions. And if we go back to the specification there, it's point 2 and point 3 that I've been looking at with this video.